Cosmic Star Heroine. From Zeboid Games, the creators of Molly the Were-Zombie, Breath of Death 7, and Cthulhu Saves the World. In a star system called Zavani, Alyssa LaSalle, a top government agent, is thrust into peril as she and her friends uncover foul deeds afoot lurking within the star system. 6/10 Phantasy Star 4, 3/10 Chrono Trigger, and a dash of Suikoden, Cosmic Star Heroine is quite a love letter to the 16-bit and 2D JRPGs from 20 plus years ago. Now let me be clear, launch for this game was not pretty. Released on April 11, 2017 on the PlayStation Store and for the PC, it greeted players with promise and bugs. A whole lot of bugs. Thankfully, Zeboid Games were quick to fix a decent amount of them. However, some still exist, but given the size of the company, it's a small wonder the game didn't sink into development hell or completely crash and burn after release. Armed with such knowledge, it becomes quite apparent how much of a labor of love this was, and the drive burning inside them while working on it. This leads me to wanting to talk about the presentation of the game. The sprites are very well crafted. The vibrancy of color reminds me of Super Nintendo JRPGs in their heyday, and the plethora, love that word, of different locales you visit really drives home the point of a much less static worlds while playing. As you progress through the game, you'll gather 11 characters to mix and match for your party of 4. Outside of Alyssa, she's locked in nearly the whole time, on your way to saving the day. There is a nice section at the selection screen called the Spy Directory. Here, the first 10 entries list playable characters and... odd. Anyway, the directory gives some info about the characters, the weapons they use, and their strengths. As for... well, he's the ultimate support character and nothing else matters. Cosmic Star Heroine's progression is handled in such a way by the last third or quarter of the game the player will have used each character at least a little bit and will have some semblance of familiarity with their playstyles. Though it's not perfect, the characters not used level up at the same rate. Unfortunately, their new abilities are not mentioned, so the player may forget characters have new nifty moves to wreak havoc on puny enemies. I say puny because once you start nearing the last few chapters, the abilities learned by leveling up or equipping certain shields with programs, only usable once you have a high enough Hackitude stat, can be mixed and matched so that you will pull off 5 to 6 digit damage easily within 2 to 3 rounds if planned accordingly. It's awesome at first, but quickly becomes a giant hammer to smash enemies into oblivion. That said, with all those characters, it does add some replayability to see which teams rock the dragon the hardest. Spoiler alert, Psybe's gotta be in it, just saying. Plus, with a multitude of abilities for each character, destruction of all the baddies is practically guaranteed. Seriously, take a look at all these. They also put some thoughts into potential drawbacks and situational uses, like in Desperate Mode. What happens is, if your style points, which increases when you use moves other than simply defending, is over 50% for most difficulties, 100% on the hardest, you will survive in negative HP. However, once that character's next turn is over, and if they are still in the negative, they will die. If your style points are below the percentage needed, they die on the spot. However, since there is no MP, all characters are healed and revived after battle, so you won't have to waste time healing and worrying if the next fight may clobber you. Added bonus, being dead at the end of battle does not stop characters from gaining experience. As for the story, it feels very much like a new age Phantasy Star 4 game, not in a terrible way, with dialogue, scenes, and environments that give a wink and a nod to other games along the way. Also, the game is peppered with brief cutscenes. Now, the art style isn't quite my cup of tea, but they're short and pop up to keep the player's attention, so as not to bore them with tons of dialogue, which in this game is cheeky about 28.429% of the time. Also, if you want, you can skip the cutscenes, so as to keep your own pace. Now, one of the things that actually surprised me about this game was how enjoyable the music was. The soundtrack was composed by Hyperduck Soundworks. They also worked on Dust and Elysian Tales soundtrack, and I find they did a phenomenal job with most of this one. They do a wonderful job in conveying tone, outside of one song which isn't terrible, just simply didn't jive with me. The soundtrack's great. My 3 favorite tunes are Battle of Conflicts, Meet the Collector, and A Firebrand and Agitator. This game on Heroine difficulty, one step below the hardest, took me a little over 13 hours to complete. There are a few side bosses that are nods to previous Zeboid Games works and provide the most challenge. However, There are a couple other missable bosses in a dungeon you can do before the point of no return, but they do not offer nearly as stiff of a challenge. If you miss the 16-bit era JRPGs and are looking for a fresh experience, or thinking of dabbling in the genre but are afraid of time sinks, this may be a great game to consider, especially since you can change the difficulty anytime and save wherever you like. Though I didn't quite care for the story, the dialogue at times made me chuckle, and the game was fun most of the time. That all said, have you played Cosmic Star Heroine or thinking about getting it? Let me know in the comment section below, and until we meet again, take it easy and have a good day.